I record this not for command, nor for the archives of the Vhoran Empire, but because silence has begun to press upon me. In the void between stars, even the hum of the cruiser feels like a heartbeat that refuses to die. And I have begun to fear that if I do not speak, I too will vanish into the cold. Our war with the species called human began as an administrative correction. Their homeworld sat in a minor spiral arm, unclaimed, resource-rich, and far from the patrol lines. When the Exploration Corps found their transmissions, the Council of Expansion approved annexation with the same indifference one might give to clearing debris from an airlock. I was chosen to command the initial compliance fleet, 20 capital ships, 200 escorts, and enough ground divisions to pacify a world 10 times the size of theirs. They refused to surrender. The first broadcast we received from them was not a plea or an offer of tribute. It was a voice, untranslated at first. But even through static, I felt the emotion beneath it. Anger, defiance, something raw and unfiltered that no Vhoran could have produced after centuries of discipline. When the linguists cracked their language, the words were simple. You will find nothing here but the will to fight. We laughed. At the time, we believed the statement quaint, a primitive display of courage. We had broken dozens of civilizations before, and each time, once orbital supremacy was established, the natives bent quickly. But the humans, they adapted with a speed that disturbed our analysts. Their satellites, though crude, became weapons within days, their oceans filled with autonomous drones made from the skeletons of fishing vessels. When we bombarded their first cities, we expected collapse. Instead, the smoke became their camouflage. They moved beneath the ashes like predators, using tunnels and ruins as if they had rehearsed extinction all their lives. My adjutant, Vareth, called them the crawling species. It was meant as insult, but there was awe in his tone, even then. We began to take prisoners. They did not break. Our interrogation drones recorded impossible endurance, days of silence under neural extraction, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, as if memorizing the shape of death. One of them, a soldier with half his body burned, whispered something before he expired. The translator rendered it as, "Tell the stars we tried." I found myself replaying that line. I should have erased it. Instead, I kept it on my private console. The war stretched into weeks, then months. The council grew impatient. Reinforcements were sent. I began to understand that we were not fighting for territory anymore, but for our understanding of control itself. Every human defeat became a seed of resistance elsewhere. They had no centralized command, yet their strikes were coordinated with a precision we could not replicate. When they learned our sensor frequencies, they flooded the spectrum with their own music. Broadcasts of orchestras and choirs, human. Voices layered across the sky until our targeting systems faltered. For hours, the fleet drifted through a fog of sound. Some of my crew claimed they could hear the rhythm echoing in their minds long after the jamming ceased. It was not war anymore. It was something older. We destroyed their capital on the 92nd day. We expected their fleets to scatter, but the opposite occurred. They attacked with every remaining vessel, charging straight into orbital fire. Our gunners reported they were ramming, not retreating. Ship after ship plunged into our lines, exploding on contact, tearing open the formation until even our command carriers were forced to withdraw. Out of 20 capital ships, I lost 9 that day. Command labeled the action irrational. I called it something else. Belief. After the battle, we found fragments of their transmissions. One phrase repeated across every frequency. We hold the line. I began to understand that they did not fight to win, they fought to be remembered. When we finally descended upon their remaining continents, the resistance was broken in theory, but not in spirit. Every village became a fortress, every ruin, a trap. They had no energy left, no chance of victory, and still they met our machines with blades, with fire, with bare hands. My soldiers began to hesitate. not from fear of death, but from confusion. How do you crush an enemy that welcomes oblivion as proof of purpose? One evening, we captured a field of their wounded. Our med technicians offered mercy injections. The humans refused. They asked only that we leave them facing east, toward their rising sun. I granted the request. I told myself it was strategy, a gesture to break their myth. But when I watched the light touch their faces hours later, I realized I had done it out of something else, respect perhaps, or guilt. By the time the Council declared victory, Earth was a cinder. Yet our sensors detected movement beneath the clouds. Small heat signatures, too scattered to matter militarily. We ignored them. We withdrew, believing we had erased them. I told my crew the war was over. I told myself the same. But in the months that followed, reports began to surface from our frontier colonies. Sabotage, raids, entire garrisons destroyed without communication. The attackers left symbols scorched into the soil, two intersecting lines, an ancient human sign meaning hope. They were still alive. Hope. That word haunted my dreams. Even before the humans, our empire had forgotten what it meant. We were efficient, disciplined, eternal. We conquered because that was our function. We expanded because to stop expanding was to admit purpose could end. The humans did not seem to care for purpose. They fought simply because they refused not to. I requested a reassignment to patrol duty, but the Council instead gave me command of the containment initiative. Our orders were to locate and neutralize the remaining human enclaves. It was supposed to be routine. The first colony we investigated lay on a moon orbiting a gas giant 2 systems from their ruined home. We found nothing on the surface except storms and rock, but beneath the crust were tunnels carved by hand. Inside were bones, hundreds of them, arranged in a spiral around a central chamber. In the center stood a beacon, built from scavenged Vhoran parts. When activated, it transmitted a single phrase into the void. Remember us. The signal was encoded in over 200 frequencies, each modulated through human vocal tones. It was not for us, it was for themselves, a ritual against being forgotten. My crew grew uneasy. Vareth asked permission to destroy the beacon. I denied it. We left the site sealed and marked it as hazardous, but I knew we had not silenced them. Weeks later, another outpost vanished. Then another. Always the same pattern. No survivors, only recordings of human music or whispered transmissions describing the color of Earth's sky. It was as though they fought now not for land or life, but for memory itself. Our analysts predicted their eventual extinction within 5 standard years. They underestimated by centuries. The humans spread like radiation, weak individually, but persistent. Every time we believed a sector cleansed, they appeared again, striking from asteroids or derelict stations, repurposing even our own dead ships against us. They learned our codes, our languages, our habits. Some even imitated our uniforms to infiltrate bases. One commander reported capturing a Vhoran, only to find, beneath the mask, a human face burned black from oxygen deprivation, still smiling through shattered teeth. There were debates in the Council. Some argued to erase the species entirely, through atmospheric sterilization. Others believed containment was more efficient. I remained silent. I had begun to suspect that neither approach mattered. We were fighting ghosts that refused to fade. When I slept, I dreamed of Earth's sunrise. I had never seen it with my own eyes, yet the memory felt inherited, like a virus of light passed through captured transmissions. I wondered if that was their true weapon, not their machines, not their numbers, but the infection of their will. Years passed. Generations of my soldiers rotated through campaigns against them. The younger officers began to fear their name. Humans, they whispered, as if invoking a curse. Our empire's borders slowed. For the first time in recorded history, we were not expanding. Resources diverted to the endless pursuit of a species we had already killed. Economists protested. Strategists warned of instability. The Council ignored them all, Pride does not reason. Then came the tragedy at Kethar Prime. A human flotilla, barely more than a dozen ships, attacked our orbital foundry there. The foundry's defenses should have erased them instantly, yet they forced an overload in the core reactor, sacrificing themselves to destroy one of our most vital supply nodes. 10 billion Vhoran civilians were displaced. Entire fleets lost fuel for months. The Council called it terrorism. I called it brilliance. After Kethar, we changed tactics. We began studying them not as enemies but as phenomena. How could a civilization that small, that wounded, continue to resist an empire spanning half a galaxy? The scholars concluded that humans lacked the psychological framework for surrender. Their evolution had been shaped by chaos, ice ages, plagues, endless internal wars. Survival was not instinct for them, it was identity. I began to wonder if conquest had softened us. We had forgotten struggle. Perhaps that was why their defiance felt like light to moths. We couldn't turn away even as it burned. During one campaign, we captured a data core from a human outpost. Inside were images, words, and something called stories. Tales of heroes, of sacrifice, of endurance. One file described a figure named Odysseus, who wandered for years seeking home. Another told of a soldier who stood alone against impossible odds, not to win, but so that others might escape. My translators were puzzled. They asked why a culture would preserve failure. I had no answer. But I began to see a pattern. Humans did not separate tragedy from triumph. To them, they were the same song, sung in different keys. We eventually found a hidden colony on the edge of uncharted space. It was built inside a hollowed asteroid, powered by fusion drives stolen from our convoys. We encircled it with 6 fleets. When we demanded surrender, they opened every channel and broadcast a single human word, acknowledged. Then they self-destructed. The explosion vaporized half our ships. I remember the silence afterward. No victory chants, no cheers, just static, echoing through the bridge. Vareth turned to me and said, "They'd rather die than fade." I could not argue. After the asteroid incident, the Council recalled me to give testimony. They wanted explanations, not truth. I told them the humans fought beyond logic, beyond reason, beyond fear. They accused me of romanticizing an enemy. Perhaps they were right. But when I looked into their cold eyes, I realized something horrifying. We had forgotten what it meant to feel awe. I was reassigned to the observation division, where captured transmissions from the outer rim were analyzed. Most were meaningless static. One day, however, a faint signal arrived from a dead sector. A repeating pulse, irregular, yet deliberate. When decoded, it formed human words. I recognized the pattern immediately. We are still here. Command dismissed it as interference. I listened to it every night. Months later, the frontier world of Drathan went dark. Recon drones found the surface scarred with orbital craters, our garrisons missing. At the center of the destruction stood a single human flag, torn and burned, still standing in the wind. It wasn't possible. No atmosphere could sustain such an artifact after bombardment. And yet, it was there. We began to see their symbols everywhere, scratched into hulls, painted across wreckage, even left inside our barracks. They were reminders that the dead were not silent. The campaign consumed decades. My scales dulled, my horns greyed. Still the humans came, always fewer, always weaker, yet never gone. Every generation of Vhoran soldiers learned the same lesson. That victory against humans meant only that they would rise again somewhere else, wearing new scars and carrying the same fire. Once, while inspecting a ruined station, I found a human, message carved into steel. If you are reading this, we are gone. If you understand this, then we won. I stood before those words for a long time, unsure whether I should destroy them or salute. I did neither. I simply recorded them and left. Years passed into centuries. Our empire began to shrink. The younger castes spoke of retreat, consolidation, peace. But peace requires an ending, and humanity never allowed us one. Their presence became myth. Pilots swore they saw human ships where none should be. Colonists told stories of shadows that appeared during solar storms. Ghost fleets drifting through the void, transmitting coordinates in forgotten tongues. Even our machines began to malfunction when scanning human relics, as if the data itself refused to die. In time, I was given command of a final expedition, not for conquest, but for confirmation. The Council wanted proof that humanity was extinct. They said it would be symbolic closure. I suspect they only wanted silence. We traveled to the Sol system. What we found was ruin beyond measure. Shattered moons, derelict satellites. The Earth itself reduced to frozen dust, yet the scanners detected faint energy signatures under the ice. We descended. Beneath the surface lay caverns lined with metal and bone. Thousands of human figures encased in glass, preserved perfectly. Not alive, not dead, waiting. Each capsule bore a single phrase engraved in their language. Until the dawn. My science. Officers insisted they were dormant stasis pods, but something about them defied understanding. The power readings were inconsistent, as though the systems drew energy from nothing. I ordered silence across the comms. In that stillness, I heard it in a faint hum. It wasn't mechanical, it was music. Low, human voices singing through the frozen air. I should have destroyed them. Every protocol demanded it. Instead, I turned away. I told my crew there was nothing here worth reporting. We left orbit within the hour. When the Council asked for my assessment, I told them humanity was gone, extinct. The word felt hollow even as I said it. That night, I dreamed again. The same vision that had haunted me since the first battle. A field of light rising from the ashes of a world. Human soldiers standing, faceless, endless, each holding torches against the dark. And behind them, something greater. Not gods, not machines, but memory itself, alive and watching. I awoke with tears. I am Vhoran. We are not built to cry. Now, I sit aboard a ship that no longer belongs to an empire. The Council is dust, our fleet scattered. We thought we ruled the stars. But the stars belong to those who dared to fight beneath them. If any species finds this recording, know this. We were conquerors, until we met the ones who refused to be conquered. They were fragile, flawed, endlessly divided. Yet in every fragment of their existence burned a defiance that reshaped the galaxy. They taught us that death is not the end. It is a mirror showing what was worth living for. The humans are gone, yes, but their echo remains. In the courage of those who remember them. In the silence of those who can't forget. When our ships fall quiet and the void closes over us, I sometimes still hear that hum. Faint, persistent, like a heartbeat buried beneath the noise of time. I used to think it was my imagination. Now I believe it is the sound of humanity, still enduring. War returned to the stars before our fleets had time to forget the last. Reports came from 3 sectors at once. Vhoran supply convoys erased, colonies silent, listening stations broadcasting fragments of human codes. At first command dismissed them as pirates, echoes of the old chaos. Then the second wave hit. 12 dockyards burned in one night, each explosion timed within a single breath. Someone was coordinating them, someone who understood how we thought. I was recalled to duty and placed in command of Task Group 12. 200 ships, enough to cleanse a system. Our objective was simple: track the source of the attacks and end it. I already knew what we would find. Humans. Always the same ghosts we refused to bury. The trail led to the Narath corridor, a stretch of space we had considered useless. Gravitational storms, debris fields, no habitable worlds. When our probes entered the region, they vanished. We sent another wave. Only static returned. but buried within it was a human frequency repeating one word: welcome. We advanced. The first mines struck within minutes, not mechanical mines, shrapnel clouds mixed with nuclear warheads, detonated manually by hidden ships too small for our sensors. We lost 17 vessels before we cleared a single corridor. When we finally reached open space, the humans were waiting. Not fleets, not armies. A few dozen ships, patched together from wreckage. Their hulls were scorched, their engines unstable, but they moved with terrifying coordination. We engaged. They never ran. They struck our command cruiser first, targeting communications. Then they disappeared into the storm. We followed, blind. Every time we fired, we destroyed only wreckage. They were fighting from shadows, using the storm as cover, turning our power against us. It took 3 days before we realized they were herding us, driving the entire task group toward a single point. At the center of the storm was a derelict moon, hollowed by ancient impacts. Human transmissions echoed from its surface. Against orders, I led the assault myself. We broke through the debris and found the truth. The moon was their fortress. Hundreds of vessels buried beneath the crust, connected by tunnels, each carrying warheads stolen from our own depots. They had built a weapon using our technology. They planned to ignite the moon's core. We bombarded for hours. Nothing stopped them. The core detonated. The explosion consumed the entire region, erasing both fleets. Only my ship survived, thrown clear by shockwave. When the sensors cleared, there was no sign of life, just fragments drifting through the void. Yet even in death, they had achieved their goal. The corridor was impassable, sealed by radiation storms that would last for centuries. They had sacrificed everything to deny us passage. Command called it a stalemate. I called it defeat. We rebuilt. They rebuilt faster. For every human we killed, another appeared with their code and their fire. We destroyed their factories, and they built new ones inside the skeletons of ours. They scavenged our drones, rewired them, sent them back carrying viruses that turned our targeting systems blind. They learned our every weakness because they lived among our wreckage. I began to record patterns. Their attacks followed no logic, no chain of command. Yet somehow, every front felt their presence simultaneously. When I overlaid the data, the coordinates formed a pattern, a symbol humans used to mark remembrance days on their old world. Even their war was a message. The Council demanded escalation. Planetary sterilization became standard procedure. Entire systems were burned. Still, the humans came. When we crushed their colonies, they responded by striking our homeworld's moons. When we erased their fleets, they sent unmanned craft packed with fusion cores into our shipyards. They were no longer fighting to survive. They were making sure we remembered them forever. During the 4th campaign, we encountered something new. A vessel the size of a continent emerged from slipspace near the Nearer Gate. At first, we thought it was debris, until it began to move. Human design, but beyond anything we had seen. Later, we learned it had been built from the remains of hundreds of ships fused together. They called it the Ark. It carried no civilians, only soldiers. Its hull emitted continuous human music, frequencies, tuned to interfere with our sensors. We attacked with everything we had. The Ark never fired back. It simply advanced, absorbing our blows. Our plasma burned its outer layers, but beneath each wound was another wall of metal. When we finally breached its core, we discovered it empty. No crew, no life signs, just reactors, rigged to overload. It detonated as we boarded. Entire fleets vaporized. I survived because my cruiser was outside the blast radius, but the sight of that explosion, silent, vast, stayed with me. They had built a ship just to die inside our ranks. The Council issued new orders. Humanity was to be purged from history, records erased, names forbidden. The word human became classified. Speaking it aloud was considered defeatism. Yet soldiers whispered it anyway, like a prayer or a warning. By then, the war had consumed half our empire's strength. Supply, lines fractured, morale decayed. Our youngest recruits had never seen victory. They fought out of duty, not belief. And belief, I learned, was the one weapon the humans never lost. Belief cannot be measured in metrics or projections. We tried. Our analysts charted morale curves, probability matrices, casualty ratios. None of it explained why the humans refused to vanish. We told ourselves they were irrational, that sooner or later numbers would triumph over spirit. But the longer the war dragged on, the more our numbers stopped meaning anything. We lost the Arath cluster in the 2nd century of conflict. 10,000 ships against barely 200 human craft. They arrived through the remains of their own destroyed gate network, traveling on trajectories that should have torn them apart. Instead, they hit our logistics convoys simultaneously, detonating fuel depots, collapsing communications. It was the first time in our history an entire arm of the Empire went dark. Command called it sabotage. I called it artistry. The Council responded with purge fleets. We sterilized whole systems, glassed worlds until their surfaces glowed. Every time we did, something in our crews broke. They stopped cheering victories. They stared at the screens in silence, watching oceans boil. One navigator asked me if we were becoming what we feared in them. I ordered him confined to quarters. Later that cycle, he vented himself into space. The humans exploited every weakness. They never fought where they could win, only where losing cost us more. They attacked supply lines, communication hubs, temples. They turned our faith against us. We began to fear absence. Any silence on a channel might mean they were already there. When the 7th Imperial Chancellor died, her final decree was to end the war through total erasure. She ordered a chain of starfires. Nova bombs seeded in every human-tainted system. I was tasked with overseeing the operation. It was supposed to end them completely, leave nothing but dust. The bombs went off exactly as planned. Suns folded inward and flared white, vaporizing everything within light minutes. I watched 23 worlds vanish in a single day. For a moment, the void felt clean again. Then came the transmissions. They arrived one by one, weak, fragmented, clearly pre-recorded. Each originated from the destroyed systems. Each said the same thing in different human voices. We forgive you. It wasn't threat, wasn't propaganda. It was farewell. The Council ordered every copy deleted, but deletion does not erase memory. The phrase spread faster than censorship. Crews whispered it before battles. Some painted it on their hulls. We began to lose discipline. How do you fight an enemy who answers annihilation with absolution? Our fleets turned on each other. Some captains refused further orders, claiming the humans had proved divinity through endurance. Others declared crusades to exterminate every trace. The Empire fractured. I stayed loyal because I no longer knew what loyalty meant, except continuing to exist. Centuries blurred. Every few decades, a new last war began. Each time, new human remnants appeared. Colonies born from seed ships launched ages before. They were fewer, thinner, sometimes half machine, sometimes half feral, but always unmistakably them. They spoke little. They fought like memory itself taking form. One engagement over the Dask Rift became legend. A single human battleship, designation, Vigil, emerged from slipspace and confronted a Vhoran dreadnought line. Outnumbered 100 to 1, it refused to retreat. We recorded their transmission. As long as one voice can speak, we are not silent. The Vigil rammed our flagship and ignited its reactor. Both ships vanished. Centuries later, the wreck still orbits the rift, glowing faintly, a monument no one built. The longer the conflict continued, the more our own history corroded. Children born on frontier worlds learned human stories from smugglers. Soldiers carried fragments of human poetry in their databanks. They said it steadied them. Command banned such things. Enforcement became impossible. We began to mirror them. Guerrilla tactics, self-sacrifice missions, propaganda built around martyrdom. The difference was that for us, these things were strategy. For them, it had always been identity. I realized too late that every victory over them rewrote us into their image. Our empire, that once valued order, had become a swarm of desperate survivors, held together only by defiance. We had conquered the galaxy, and in doing so, inherited humanity's curse, to fight without end, because stopping meant admitting emptiness. The humans had won long before the last battle. They had made us like them. Command collapsed before the end came. Entire sectors declared independence. Fleets refused recall orders. Archives burned to keep enemy boarding parties from capturing them. I stayed at my post out of habit. There was nowhere else to go. When the council finally disbanded, its last message reached every remaining commander. Contain the human threat at all costs. No one replied. The final campaign began near the remains of the Soul Gate. Intelligence claimed the humans had gathered there for a last stand, one unified fleet composed of every fragment that had survived. We expected 100 ships at most. The scouts returned screaming that there were thousands. The numbers made no sense. Many were empty hulls welded together, others remote-driven drones. But they moved like a single organism. We mobilized everything left, 3,000 warships, the greatest armada in Vhoran history. It was not enough. When contact began, there were no speeches, no transmissions, just the flicker of movement across the void. They attacked in silence, every formation designed to trade itself for destruction. Our first line vanished in hours. The second followed before sunset. We outgunned them 10-1, but every ship they lost took one of ours with it. The battle spread across the entire system, a storm of light without command or control. For 6 days, the void glowed like a new sun. On the 7th, both fleets were gone. Only debris remained. Thousands of fragments orbiting the ruins of Earth's dead moon. We thought it over until the sensors caught a single transmission. A human voice, calm, almost weary. If you remember us, then we have not died. No one answered. There was no one left to. I drifted among the wreckage for weeks, salvaging what little could still move. Corpses of Vhoran and human alike floated side by side, indistinguishable in the dark. I realized the war had ended not with victory or surrender, but with merging. The ashes of both species scattered together through space. When I finally returned to base, the Empire was gone. The capital lay abandoned, power grids silent. Civil wars had finished what the humans began. The few survivors looked at me with hollow eyes, asking if it was true that the enemy was extinct. I told them yes, though I no longer believed it. Years passed. Patrols dwindled. The stars grew quiet. But sometimes an old relay will wake and send a burst across the network, static-shaped almost like words. Engineers say it's interference from the debris fields. I recognize patterns in it, fragments of human speech, phrases repeating in endless loops. We endure, we endure, we endure. I am old now. My bones ache in low gravity. My scales crack from recycled air. The younger officers ask why I keep the war logs active. They think the past should be forgotten. I tell them that forgetting is how wars begin again. They do not understand. When I sleep, I see the final battle replayed in silence, a dance of ruin. I see our banners and theirs fading into the same dust. And I see something else, beyond the wreckage, beyond the cold, a glimmer. A single vessel drifting, lights flickering, course unknown. Sometimes I think it is human. Sometimes I think it is hope. If anyone hears this record, know this. We fought a people who should never have mattered, who should have broken like glass under the weight of empires. Instead, they taught us that endurance is not strength and survival is not victory. It is memory that defines the living, and in that memory, they remain undefeated. I will end this log now. The lights are fading again. The ship hums softly, like a voice beneath my breath. Perhaps it is just the engines, or perhaps it is them, whispering through the static, reminding me that nothing truly ends while someone remembers. If that is true, then humanity is still here. I remain in orbit above what was once Vhoran space. The maps no longer match the stars. Even the constellations have shifted during the centuries of silence. Our empire is dust. The archives are gone. I am the last registered officer of command, rank. And even that title feels like a lie whispered to a corpse. We won the war, the council once said. Yet here I am, surrounded by wreckage that proves we lost something far greater than power. The systems we conquered are empty. The worlds we pacified lie buried beneath radiation storms. Nothing answers our beacons except the faint echoes of transmissions recorded long before I was born. When I ask the computer to translate them, it returns the same word again and again: human. I should delete the word. It is forbidden by the old decrees. But I cannot. Without it, I would have nothing left to measure myself against. Every empire needs a mirror, and theirs was the last one to show us who we really were. I spend my days repairing what remains of the ship. The crew are long gone. Some fled. Others chose the quiet release of vacuum. Their quarters remain untouched. I walk past the empty bunks and imagine I hear them breathing. The sound comforts me. Sometimes the navigation system detects movement, small, deliberate. Drones, perhaps, or scavengers. Yet part of me hopes they are human. Even now, after all that has passed, I wish to see one again, to look into those eyes that never stopped defying the dark. I remember a battle above Kareth's belt. The humans had nothing left. Half their ships disabled, ammunition spent. They turned their engines toward the asteroids and accelerated, using the impacts as weapons. Each collision tore through our formations. When their last vessel was breached, they detonated its core and sealed the belt forever. It has circled, their dead sun ever since, glowing faintly, a ring of their making. I sometimes go there. I sit in orbit and watch the fragments drift. My instruments pick up faint radiation bursts, structured, rhythmic. My science officers would have called it interference. I call it heartbeat. I have begun to understand that extinction is not a moment. It is a slow fading of sound, a whisper carried through generations until no one remembers the language, but still hums the tune. That is humanity now, a melody without origin, played by the universe itself. The younger races will never know them. They will find our ruins, our burned data, and wonder who built the bones that circle these stars. They will not know that beneath all this metal once walked beings who refused to bow to inevitability. I have replayed the final human transmission more times than I can count. The voice was calm, almost tender. If you remember us, then we have not died. I think that is why I keep recording, not to atone, but to ensure they remain alive somewhere in the noise. My own systems are failing. Power cells degrade faster, each cycle. Soon, this ship will become part of the debris field, another relic for future explorers to misinterpret. Before that happens, I will send this record into the void, encrypted on every frequency the humans once used. If anything listens, it will find their story inside mine. Once, I believed glory came from conquest. The humans taught me otherwise. Glory is endurance. It is standing when everything demands you fall. It is carrying memory through fire and silence, until even memory burns out and still walking. When they fell, they did not ask for vengeance. They asked to be remembered. I am their answer. The power cores grow dimmer each rotation. I ration energy between life support and transmission array, though I know neither will last. It is almost peaceful, this slow decay. For the first time in centuries, the ship is quiet enough for thought. Review the tactical archives one final time. Every battle, every engagement, every loss. In the end, patterns emerge, not of strategy, but of meaning. The humans always moved toward light. No matter the cost, they fought to keep it lit a little longer. Our own tactics were born from fear of the dark. Theirs were born from love of what could shine within it. During one campaign, we captured a human diary. Its pages were burned, words nearly erased, but a line remained. We will not go gentle into that good night. The analysts ignored it as cultural nonsense. I think it was their creed. They faced oblivion and spoke to it as an equal. We never learned how they thought, only how they acted. Perhaps that is why they outlasted us. They did not need understanding, only conviction. I remember when the last council order reached me. Eradicate all traces. By then, the Empire was already disintegrating. I obeyed, but each strike felt hollow. Every time a human relic burned, something inside our own identity turned to ash. I wonder if they foresaw that outcome. Perhaps their greatest victory was convincing their destroyers to finish the work on themselves. I once asked a prisoner why they kept fighting when they had already lost. He smiled, tired, broken, bleeding, and said, "Because someone has to remember we tried." I never forgot those words. They echo now louder than command protocols, louder than the hum of dying engines. Sometimes I think I see movement outside, the viewport. Shapes gliding through the void, faint silhouettes of ships. I tell myself it is debris, but the sensor ghosts follow formation patterns. Human formations. Even in memory, they refuse disorder. I keep imagining how their children might have lived if the war had never begun. Cities under alien skies, songs in languages we could never pronounce. It is strange to feel sorrow for an enemy, stranger still to feel envy. The navigation core flickers, displaying a coordinate that does not exist. 00000. Origin point, Earth. The system is gone, yet the coordinate appears each cycle as if the ship itself wants to return. Perhaps memory is built into metal as much as flesh. When I first met humans, I thought them fragile. Now I see they were the only ones truly alive. Everything we built was designed to last. Everything they built was designed to mean there is a difference. The first endures, the second matters. If any future traveler discovers this log, know that I was there when the fire of humanity guttered out, and when its light refused to die. They taught us that existence is not measured in time, but in defiance. They stood before the infinite and said, "Not yet." My vessel drifts toward the dead center of the old war zone. Radiation storms whisper through the hull. The communications array still functions enough for one final message. I have rewritten its core directive. It no longer carries the insignia of the Vhoran Empire. It carries their words. We are still here. When the signal leaves this ship, it will travel until the universe itself cools. Somewhere, someday, something may hear it and wonder who sent it. That will be enough. To be wondered about is to be remembered, will remain until the lights go out. There is no fear in me now, only the quiet certainty that I have witnessed something holy, not divine, not supernatural, simply human, and that is enough. The ship is almost silent now. Each flicker of the consoles feels like the last heartbeat of a creature too proud to die quietly. I have disabled the distress beacon. There will be no rescue, and I prefer it that way. Rescue implies purpose, and my purpose ended the day the last human voice faded into static. I sit in the command chair and open the viewing port. Stars drift like embers caught in endless wind. Somewhere among them are the remains of worlds they once called home. I imagine their oceans, the scent of rain, the sound of children they swore would see the dawn. I have never seen those things, yet they live in my mind as if I had. That is their legacy. They made their memories contagious. I record my final entry. There will be no sign-off, no formal closure. The empire is gone, and even its language is dying. But the name human will endure. It will echo in the quiet minds of those who come after, a whisper asking what strength once burned behind that word. I remember the first time I saw them through the gun sight, small, unremarkable, screaming into the void. I remember the last time I saw them, standing amidst ruin, silent but unbroken. Between those moments stretches everything I once believed about power, all of it proven false. They taught me that courage is not victory, and hope is not expectation. It is choosing to stand when reason says fall. It is refusing to let the story end, even when the final page has burned away. The ship trembles. The reactor has reached its limit. Soon there will be only debris. I think I will face it as they did, without pleading, without retreat, just acceptance and a little wonder. The recorder blinks red, waiting for last words. I could recite the code of command, the oaths of empire, but they mean nothing. Instead, I will say what they said, long ago, when they first looked up at the night sky and dreamed of reaching us. We endure. If this fragment survives, if anyone finds it adrift between the stars, let it be a warning and a prayer. Beware the species that fights for memory. Honor the species that taught an empire humility. Remember the ones who burned so bright that even the void remembers their light. The hull groans, the lights dim. I close my eyes and see them as they were, not soldiers or enemies, just beings standing against infinity, daring to believe that something fragile could outlast everything strong. Perhaps in the silence that follows, I will hear them again. Not their words, not their music, just the pulse beneath existence that carried their defiance through every death. It beats now in me, in this dying vessel, in the dust that was our worlds. And when that pulse finally stops, the stars themselves will remember the rhythm, because humanity was never a species. It was a promise. The console fades to black. I lean back and wait for the end. Outside, the void glows faintly, as if some distant light has refused to go out. I find myself smiling. It is a human expression, but it feels right. For all our wars, for all our arrogance, we were lucky to have known them. Lucky to have witnessed what unbroken truly means. The hum falls to silence. The stars keep shining. And somewhere, carried, on the faintest wave of static, a voice still whispers through the dark, "We are still here."